Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I just had a pretty stressful gaming sesh, so I thought I'd cool down by making a quick video for you guys. I've already made my videos on my first thoughts, just reading through the kit of Aventurine and Robin. However, now I think I have a better, more knowledgeable opinion on the two that I feel is solid enough for me to actually share. Now, it is just a V1, and this is likely going to change in the future, but it's just nice to talk about. Right. So, I want to get the shit out of the way. Sorry if that comes off as rude. Aven. Aven is incredibly underwhelming. I knew this was going to happen the second I saw him getting overhyped on social media, despite me taking a first look at his kit, and I was left confused at what was so good because it seemed so mid. And that's exactly what's going on. He is very, very mid, mostly because even in the FUA team that a lot of people were hyped about him being for, he just doesn't have enough synergy. He doesn't buff the FUA team at all. All he really does is leech off of the FUA team. And because of this, the FUA team, with how much damage they can do on their own with the Ashblade core, can actually perform better with another buffer. Right? So he's supposed to be viable as a main DPS for the FUA comp, but he just isn't really that important, if important at all, in terms of the FUA team synergy. And even when you look at it further, it gets even worse, because he's not fully synergistic with FUA vertical investments either. Like, for example, E2 Mblade, because he's an elation character who has a ton of elation damage, he just isn't synergistic with E2 Mblade either, which is the biggest eidolon in the Ashblade core for increasing the synergy. For example, Gilgamesh actually has full synergy with Mblade's E2 in this comp. However, not only this, the Ashblade core has full synergy with Gilgamesh's E1. So unironically, at like an E2 Mblade one cost DPS comparison between E1 Gilgamesh and E0 Aventurine, I'm decently confident that Aventurine loses to E1 Gilgamesh on this team, right? Which is hilarious, because a lot of people, when they were talking about Gilgamesh's synergy with the FUA comp, were instantly getting slapped down with comments of people saying, oh, his synergy with the FUA comp doesn't matter because Aventurine is going to blow him out of the water anyways. But as of the current V1, this guy is really mid, probably loses to E1 Gilgamesh in a few situations, and to make matters even worse, the generalist Robin SP, who is literally on this same patch, despite her being a generalist buffer not necessarily targeted for this team, outperforms him in this team as well. Right? Because she's once again just buffing the damage of the Ashblade core, and because of this, the Ashblade core is now doing so much damage that they don't even give a fuck about Aven, who doesn't do anything for them. Right? So yeah, Aven's FUA team is incredibly underwhelming. Well, then what about his Elation team? That's also a bit underwhelming, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if he's necessarily the weakest Elation DPS in his Elation team, but it kind of seems like it from the gameplays I've seen. It could be going band for band maybe with Sparksy, but Silverwolf and Evanesia are definitely stronger than Aven in their Elation teams. Right, so both of his teams, in all honesty, are quite underwhelming. Sorry to the Aven fans, but the current V1 is just not it. And I just hope that he get changes in the future versions. Right. Now that we got all that out of the way, let's move on to Robin. There is no other way to explain Robin as another Mblade. Right? She is literally on the same tier as Mblade, in my opinion, in terms of being one of the highest valuable pulls in the entirety of the game and being generally usable across a multitude of teams. Right? As far as I've seen, Robin's best in slots are currently Saber Gilgamesh, Himiko, Anoxa. She can replace Aridra and be more valuable because of how much more stronger her buffs are, right? And just in general, I mean, there's a ton of teams. FUA comp as well. I almost forgot about that despite me just mentioning it. The FUA comp, same thing. I'd imagine My Day replacing Tribby in that Cyrene comp with Robin SP is also probably stronger for a My Day comp. on and on and on. And the more defense shred sources are in a specific team but don't hit 100% yet, like let's say if you're in a team with enough defense shred sources to hit 60 or 70% defense shred without Robin SP yet, Robin SP is automatically going to be a big buff for that team, because the jump from 60 or 70 to 100% defense shred is very, very, very high, right? I recently made a post explaining to people who seem to be a little confused in terms of why it is that I believe that Robin SP is better than Ceridra in an Anoxa comp. And when you look at it, it makes significantly more sense. Anoxa is able to give himself defense shred from implanting all weaknesses on enemies. It's like an inherent trace that he has. However, also, this makes him fully synergistic with the Genius set. This is why all Anoxas basically run the Genius set for their main DPS. And his Light Cone also gives him 12% defense shred. All of this totals out to 60%. Robin's defense shred buff caps out at 40%, meaning you can get the capped out 100% defense shred with Anoxa. Going from 0 to 60% defense shred in HSR is about an overall 47% damage increase, but going from 60 to 100% is a further 70% overall damage increase, right? Totaling to 114. So getting Robin SP, not only does she give those insane defense shred buffs, allowing Anoxa to hit near his max stacks, however, she also has then 20% vulnerability, another rare buff in Anoxa teams that does not exist unless you have Cyrene's Light Cone. However, not only this, she also has his other most hungry buff that he wants, attack buffing, right? So she has attack buffing, vulnerability, and enough defense shred to get him to basically 100% if you're at her max stacks, which is why she's so goddamn strong. Even if Ceridra has that really good synergy with Cyrene and Anoxa teams, gimmicks at the end of the day can be power crept through just much stronger amping numbers, and that seems to exactly be the case in this Anoxa team. Robin SP just provides way too many buffs, while also at least still having some synergy since she's a Rem character in terms of generating charge for Cyrene. It just works out incredibly well, right? I've seen some people mention that in Sustainless, Robin SP might be worth it, but I don't really like to consider Sustainless outside of Phanon and Sustainless Firefly teams at a certain investment, because they just die, right? Like, they just die if they aren't running someone who can actually slow the enemies. Especially in this case, in a Sustainless comp, you'd be replacing RMC with Robin SP. However, one of the things that made Anoxa Sustainless significantly more survivable was RMC's technique, which delayed the enemies. Now, if you replace him with Robin SP, yeah, she's obviously significantly better in terms of amping him and synergy with Cyrene. However, you're gonna die faster. Right? So Sustainless just becomes significantly harder with Anoxa unless you're able to brute force in a very short amount of AV, which usually requires significantly higher costs, right? So with all that being said, Robin SP is great for Anoxa, and I am considering sustain teams here. However, if you already have E1 Ceridra and you're specifically having Robin SP in mind with investing into Anoxa, that's where things change a bit for me. I don't think it's really worth it pulling Robin SP just to replace an E1 Ceridra in a Anoxa team. I don't think it's worth it, because even if she is maybe still slightly stronger, it's just not enough to really justify the pulls. You can really only justify them if you know you can use Robin on another team that would really appreciate her, right? She works incredibly well with Saber Gilgamesh as well, because Saber Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is being given for free, and Gilgamesh's E1, which a lot of people are going to aim for, gives team-wide 30% defense shred. And then she has her capped out 40%, and her E1 even further increases the max amount of defense shred buffing she can give to 50%. And as mentioned earlier, defense shred becomes much stronger the later you get, so the Saber Gilga comp also quite appreciates her as well. Himiko appreciates her, My Day appreciates her, a ton, if not all teams in the game can appreciate a Robin SP just because of how powerful defense shred is. Right. So Robin SP is, in my opinion, on the same tier of a pole in value as Emblade. If not, to be honest, I may actually put her a notch higher since she actually has a gimmick in action advance. Emblade is just a frequent attacker who is able to ult spam decently frequently. However, Robin has actual action advance alongside oldish strong buffing, which makes her more valuable in teams that obviously value that, like Sabers, especially E6 Sabers. E6 Saber absolutely loves action advance, and it's a reason why RMC is actually incredibly synergistic with E6 Saber. But now Robin can actually kind of fill that slot, and once again with E1 Gilgamesh, she is definitely stronger than RMC since you're stacking significantly more defense shred on the team. Right. Now, of course, some people will mention this, the full stacks for defense shred on Robin teams isn't consistent because she will reset them by half every once in a while. But the thing is, even if she resets them by half, she's still giving, I believe, like 27.5% defense shred, and obviously you're able to stack back decently quickly. So on average, in my opinion, after the ramp up phase for her vibe stacks is finished, let's say you're at 35 to 40 stacks, most of the time you're at, let's say, 90+% defense shred in Anoxa teams, for example, which is still quite strong. And then if you want that consistent 100% defense shred in an Anoxa team, then you'd have to get her E1. It's very clear that the way the weird ramp up works on her defense shred is intended for just selling her E1 and not really any other purpose, in my opinion, but it is what it is, right? She's still strong at base. She doesn't need the E1 at all. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Peace out.